This is a story by Rabbi Wallerstein about a man named Mr. Lefkowitz. Mr. Lefkowitz lived in a nursing home where every person shared a room with another patient. As his new roommate walks in, he wheels his wheelchair over with total enthusiasm and his upbeat personality to introduce himself and welcome him to the room. His new roommate, Mr. Friedman, is the most bitter and miserable elderly man. Later that night, he hears Mr. Friedman crying to himself, and despite his rudeness, he can't help but hear the pain in his cry. So he rolls over to Mr. Friedman and he tells him, "What's wrong?" He knows that Mr. Friedman is not interested in his help, but he gives it a try, and Mr. Friedman rudely brushes him off. "This is my side, that's your side. This is none of your business." And Mr. Lefkowitz thinks to himself, "I have 24 hours left with this guy. I'm going to give it my best shot. Try to get something out of him." And so he insists, until finally Mr. Friedman confesses that he's blind. He tells Mr. Friedman, "I have one favor to ask of you. Tomorrow, at sunrise, give me 30 minutes and not more. We will sit by the window and I'll describe you every detail of the sunrise. For 30 minutes, I'll be your eyes. If you don't like it, we'll never do it again, I promise." Mr. Friedman sees that he won't give up, and so he agrees. The next morning, Mr. Lefkowitz wakes up with full enthusiasm, and he's excited to get started. He brings his new friend over to the window and starts describing every detail. He makes the experience unreal, and slowly, this becomes a routine. They do every sunrise and every sunset without missing one. They become best friends and inseparable. A few months later, Mr. Friedman wakes up, ready for his daily routine with his best friend. But when he turns over, he doesn't find Mr. Lefkowitz in the bed next to him. In panic, he calls for the nurse, asking for his best friend, and the nurse doesn't know how to respond. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Friedman. Mr. Lefkowitz had a bad chest pain last night and was rushed to the hospital, and he didn't make it through." In total shock, he tells the nurse, "I have to be at that funeral. I have to tell his children and his grandchildren the amazing person that he was." And he asks the nurse for one last favor. "Take me to the window that's facing the plants, that's facing the children playing in the park, that's facing the woman with her poodle, that's facing the sunrise and the sunset, and all the details that Mr. Lefkowitz always spoke about. I'm telling you, bring me to the window, please." And the truth was, there was no window. Mr. Lefkowitz sat there every day, creating a whole world of details that was not there. Mr. Friedman went to the funeral and stood before everyone and told him, "It is one thing to sit before a window and recount everything before you in such a detailed and fine manner. What a chesed. But what my best friend Mr. Lefkowitz did was so much more than that. He was faced with the same wall as me, and yet he took the very same wall and he turned it into a window for me. That is an angel." When you're in full energy and chesed comes easy to you, it's a beautiful act. But when you're at your lowest, and when you're in your own darkness, and you channel it to give a light to someone else, that's a godly chesed.